So number 6, if you've been counting, so I'd like to say from an efficiency standpoint, I was able to get 6 in, so rather than have to spread them out, 2 different, so that's just... But, of course, I speak at an unintelligible rate where no one can actually understand, so, it doesn't work out that well. So, but I did get 6 in because, again, imitation is the second highest form of flattery. So I almost took and added a 1 or took 1 out so I didn't have to pay you money. But we're on a mission from God. And by the way, all the Gen X people in here who smiled and laughed at that, that's fine. You can smile and laugh at that. If you don't understand it, you can ask someone later. But he gave us all these gifts within the body, right, for a purpose. Right? We got a job. We got a job, and you're part of the body, and you were given that mission, that gifting, that role right from the get-go. Not got given it and then had to cook for a while until you could finally exercise that, right? Okay, yeah, we'll wait. No, he gave it to you, equipping the saints for the work of ministry, right? To build up the body. Why? What are the purpose in there? Why did he do this, right? To equip the saints for the work of the ministry. To build up the body of Christ. And it's interesting, the word there actually means build, like you would construct a building. In the Greek, it's actually the word building there, which is a great reminder because as we build each other up, sometimes that involves some remodeling, right? But ultimately, it's building up, right? So you'll find as you begin, and you've probably seen this, as you begin to use your gifting, there are times when things kind of don't go well. There are times when others might have other ideas about how you should exercise your gifting and things like that. But ultimately, that's okay as long as it's done in the context of that building up, of constructive criticism, right? But if it's not, if you hear me, if what you think I'm saying right now is don't criticize other people who are exercising their gift, then I'm actually saying yes. If you can't tell the difference between constructive criticism and the building up, then find someone who can tell you about that and go forward. But at the same time, the building here, it's a great analogy, great micro-analogy in there, right? The building up. And when? How long should we continue to do this, right? Until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of God's Son. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? No? Right? Until we all reach that unity. Right? The second piece of it is growing into maturity, right? I'm spiritually mature. Been in the church for a while, got a lot of Bible knowledge, right? In growing into a maturity with the stature measured by Christ's fullness. Oops. Right? Okay, well, that's a different bar than I was thinking. I was comparing myself to, the people who I think are not far as long as I am. So, throw Jesus into it, will you? But it's only after those 2 things, then we will no longer be little children, right? Oops. We got some maturing to do. Yeah, we might be adult children in that case, at least from the eyes of Christ. And the reason, what happens after that is, the soul will no longer be tossed by the waves and blown around by every wind of teaching, by human cunning with cleverness and the techniques of deceit. I don't know about you. I've been deceived at times, right? We still have. And that gets back into why that body ministry is so important, why those connections are so important, right? Exhorting each other daily, right? Because we're not there yet, but we need each other to continue that peace. All right? We're on a mission from God. I didn't wear my fedora or sunglasses. All right, Gen X laughs. Okay. So, postscript. So I got the 6 in. I had a couple extras that were rolling around, but I didn't count them as official we ares. So here we go. The question to you is, how do we communicate our identity, right? How do people in general communicate identity, right? Well, I have a sticker on my car, right? I have clothing. It may be a haircut. It may be the clothing I wear. You can tell I belong to the group of people who don't care about fashion or what they look like. So that's end up like this. But I do have sensible boots, so that kind of thing. I'm ready to. Anyway. So how do we communicate that, right? Through outward signs, right? Outward. In fact, in some cases, the outward signs may be the only part of an identity that some people own, right? So how did Jesus tell us to communicate our identity, right? With what outward signs? And the interesting thing is, as we've crammed outward signs into that, the culture keeps grabbing them, right? To the point where any outward sign you could think of that has been used to communicate somehow that I am a member of the family of God, that I'm a member of the body, the culture keeps grabbing onto. When I grew up, it was crosses, right? Everyone's wearing crosses, and then all of a sudden, Madonna's wearing a cross, right? The other Madonna, the singer. Anyway. But I mean, and there are people who look far more put together than us. That given any outward sign, there is always someone who's doing that loves Jesus, and there's other people who are doing that who don't know Jesus, right? So those outward signs aren't necessarily what God has given us. In fact, the only one I could come up with, short notice, maybe you can find some here as well, John 13, right? I give you a new command, love one another. Just as I've loved you, you're also to love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. You get said 3 times, right? That's, for learning. But the outward sign we've been given, that's hard, right? I'd much rather put something, a hat, special hat on or something. Guy's a Christian, cool. Body of Christ, excellent. I'd much rather do that because I can phone that in, right? To really love one another in our diversity, to have that unified body nature when we don't always agree on the same things, we may not see things the same way, we may have different experiences and look different, but that's where that begins to shine. Yeah, it isn't obvious. You can't always pick them out of a crowd, but sometimes you can, right? Because these people are loving, we are to be loving one another, and that's the outward sign we've been given, right? It's a beautiful thing because it prevents me from seeking out the externals, right? From seeking out something that I can put on so that I can set my body work aside on the days when it's hard or tough, right? And it gets back into, I think, from the women's Bible study, they were talking about that, the symbolic versus the actual, that stuff's really symbolic. The actual is what drives us, right? Because the reason why we do it, that's what we're communicating there. Okay, so what happens when things go south? Right? What happens when body life goes south? What do you do when things in the body or local body or the group or the body, the worldwide body of Christ, or even a local subgroup that you have to be involved in? What happens when it's not healthy? Right? What do you do? What do I do when I'm full of criticism about the way certain people are exercising their gifts? Or that things aren't working the way that they're supposed to, right? When I feel that's not healthy. Well, here's how I'm going to go out into odd medical analogies, right? Think about this in autoimmune disease, right? What happens when the body attacks itself? Right? What do we do as believers? So I introduce to you, don't cringe, Steve, I know, but I introduce to you the EpiPen, Model 4. Right? I know. So think about that. Slow clap. Yeah, so think about that. The EpiPen, right? What do we do when you have an allergy that's so bad that your body begins to attack itself and things have gone wrong? A lot of families have an EpiPen they use. So use the EpiPen, right? Model 4. So what I recommend is anytime you're feeling like this, read this out loud to yourself, right? Ephesians 4. Right? Read this first to yourself and own it. Put it on your heart and say it out loud and own it. And if you have to, and if you feel led, then say it to someone else too afterwards. Therefore I, the prisoner in the Lord, urge you to live worthy of the calling you have received, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, making every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There's one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope at your calling. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in all. And if you need additional doses, you can actually read further into Ephesians 4, and it's great. I think there's probably a maximum number of recommended hits. But think of that. When things go south, read this out loud. Right? Medicine for the soul. So in that, right? And that's that piece there. I stole your stuff, Brad. I get it. Sorry. But it's Jesus who's the head of the body. And we're the members of that.